From news and politics to food, wine, and music, it's all here. This is The Drive with Steve Jaxon on KSRO.
All right. I just found out that I had met Chris Coulombe a few years back when he was in talking cannabis. He's now running for the 2nd Congressional District against Jared Huffman. Chris is a veteran business owner and lifelong Sonoma County resident. And Chris, welcome back.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Earlier, facetiously, I said, well, good luck, Chris. Usually Jared has been running with no opponents.
Correct.
And so this is not an easy thing to pull off, but you will be running against Jared in the primary. And by the way, Jared Huffman will be joining us for the last segment of today's show after Brouhaha. Let's start with the cannabis thing. When you were in here, I don't know, how many years ago? Long time.
I'd say four to five.
Okay, and what were we talking about at that point?
Probably the terrible taxation regulations that were going to cause collapse to the industry.
And what's the organization you founded?
I was a co-founder of the Cannabis Distribution Association.
And where do you think we stand now after 4 or 5 years in the cannabis situation? I mean, they're trying to get the taxes down.
I'd say the cannabis industry is dying for representation. We have watched that industry give a start here in California, and then we've watched it bleed to death quite quickly. We're watching a lot of the regulations really prove themselves to be problematic for small businesses.
And one of the main problems with all that is that the black market can thrive because the legal market is hurting.
Absolutely. There's a phrase inside of the industry that the best thing to happen to the unregulated market was the regulated market.
Yeah.
There's estimates that are saying that on average we're seeing about $1 billion a month in cannabis revenue generated here in the state of California, and of that, maybe 30% is going to the regulated market.
Yeah. Yeah, something's got to be done.
They need representation.
Yeah. Interesting.
Chris, give us a better idea of your background. We know that you were engaged in the cannabis business, but
yes.
You've got much more experience than that. Tell us about it.
So, I was, again, born and raised here in Sonoma County, got my Eagle Scout, went on to do 16 years in the military, started off as a enlisted man, and then eventually got my commission, served in the Marine Corps, and then eventually became an infantry officer in the Army. I did a few different tours, and then my last assignment, I was assigned to the Senator Daniel K. Inouye Asia Pacific Center for Security Studies. And in that role, I was a fellow, and my job was to help understand what's taking place in basically anywhere between Pakistan and the west coast of the Americas.
Wow.
And understanding the transnational challenges that many of the countries in that area are facing, helping them find solutions, helping them address the challenges not only as a single country, but also working with countries within that region or in other areas together to try and create good policy, productive policy, and create really a better environment both for their citizens, for businesses, and general safety as well.
Our guest is Chris Coulombe. He is running for Congress, 2nd District, against Jared Huffman in the primary. So that's the big question, and I don't want to jinx you or anything, and I was being basically facetious, but it ain't easy running against someone like Jared Huffman, who is, nobody has been really trying to run against him lately for the last number of years, and it's interesting.
What led you to the decision to run against Congressman Huffman? Because most folks...
Harry just stole the question out of
I'm sorry.
my feeble brain.
Couldn't wait.
Couldn't wait. There was a pause there. I felt the need to fill it.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is your first run for elective office, correct?
Correct.
Now, folks will start at the city level or maybe the county level. Few start right at the congressional level. So what led you to this decision to run for the seat in Congress?
Well, I think we're watching, as Americans, we're watching what's happening in our political system. And so far as I can tell, no one is happy. Doesn't matter if you're on the left or the right. And we're watching a lot of the same party politics being played again and again. And at some point, we have to recognize that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different outcome. Some guy named Einstein said that. And I think one of the things that we can see, even here in the 2nd District, is that there is a lot of room for improvement, not only here, but across the country. And my sense is that all of us are frustrated. And as I get out to the district to talk to people, I'm beginning to find that more and more people, whether they're in Marin or Sonoma or Mendocino, Humboldt, Del Norte, everyone is frustrated.
What are they frustrated about, besides the obvious things that most of us are frustrated about? But as far as it goes with Jared Huffman, you were quoted as saying, we deserve new leadership in Washington, D.C. and a better future. What has Congressman Huffman not done or done that he shouldn't have? I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So, do you like water, Steve?
I drink water.
Okay.
I drink Chardonnay more than I drink water, but yeah.
You need water to make Chardonnay, Steve.
Exactly.
So indirectly, you like water.
I do like water, yes.
So one of the issues that I think we're facing, and we're having this very strange conversation in the midst of a 1,200, the worst drought we have experienced in 1,200 years, and we have our congressional representative talking about removing dams, removing water storage. This is water storage that provides us drinking water for a population in which we are intending to grow and we are watching grow. This is a water storage capacity that we are using to feed our agricultural crops, to feed our businesses, and also to fight our fires. And for us to give up 25 million gallons of water storage, it's the wrong conversation. I think the conversation needs to be, how do we increase our storage capacity across the entire district?
You know, Jared Huffman has done a lot over all these years in Congress when it comes to climate change and water and everything else that's associated with it. I mean, he's tried hard. I know that. As you can tell, I'm a fan of Jared, and he's with us. He's with us every week here on this show.
Nice.
And if you happen to beat him, you will be too on the show every week.
I'll take you up on that offer.
But I mean, Jared is really a major player in the climate change issue in Congress, in the House, and has been for all his time there. So I don't know. You know what I'm saying? I'm not.
Well, I think he's an environmental lawyer, and everything that I know about him strikes me that he's a good person. The issue I think that we're running up against as a country, as a species, is that the climate change is happening more. It's happening faster, and it's happening more aggressively. And I think we need to step up and be far more aggressive in our means to address that climate change. And I think his background is doing a lot of the more legal side, the administrative elements, which I think were appropriate. And I think as he continues on, and if he does something in environmental lobbying, he would be very well suited for that. But what we need in Congress are leaders. We need people who are going to show up with vision, who are going to sit down with the shareholders and the stakeholders and make sure that we have the leadership necessary to move this country forward, to move our environmental agenda forward and start protecting the next generations. Because here in particularly the 2nd District, we're watching the reality of climate change impact us basically every year.
Heavily.
And I don't think we're doing enough.
When you first decided to run for the seat, what was the reaction of the friends and folks close to you as far as the reality of what you would be facing?
Well, I don't think anybody is mistaken about the challenge, particularly showing up against somebody in a heavily blue district, particularly when you cut out, for whatever reason, the major metropolitan area of Santa Rosa. But overall, I think people were very welcome to the idea. I think people recognize that we do need new blood in Congress across the board, not just here, but that we also need people that are ready to show up with leadership experience, with ability to bring forward vision, and to, again, bring people together to accomplish these, what are now becoming existential challenges to our country, to our species.
As I said, and I don't want to keep harping on this, but Jared is a friend of mine. He's not only a regular guest on the show, but he's a friend. Mm-hmm. And I hang out with him when I'm in D.C., and he's been in here many times. He once told me, excuse me, and this was in his office in D.C. We were talking about a lot of stuff, and he mentioned, and I think I kind of questioned him about this, and he did mention the difference and the toughness of getting into Congress, and once he became a House member, how freaking tough it is to deal with everything and everyone around you, because you're just butting your head against people and butting your head against the wall in many ways, and it's
Multiple
frustrating.
agendas. Yeah.
What do you think has prepared you for taking on that type of challenge?
Well, again, going back to experience working in international organizations, I've done a fair amount of work. My master's degree is in international relations. Wrote my thesis on China, South China Sea. Focused heavily on global economics, international challenges as a whole. Studied in Europe for a little while to make sure that I understood how many of these organizations work. But from the military time, serving as a captain and working not only inside of the military but also with other agencies that work in parallel with the government, and understanding how to bring people together. I've run organizations of 2 all the way up to 200, and taking big picture ideas, bringing on stakeholders that are ready to see the vision, see how to work together to accomplish that. I think it's an excellent training platform to get to a place where we can make real change inside of Congress. And we're watching a lot of veterans step up in this midterm, because a lot of us see just how bad the situation is for the United States and how the party politics are really tearing this country apart.
Well, I'm personally glad you're running.
Thank you.
And it's going to be an interesting
I always
race.
like to see competition in races.
I agree.
I've always had a problem with no rival candidates running.
And Jared has not had any really since he's been in Congress.
Yeah.
So, yes, I am glad you're running. The website is Chris2Congress, Chris2Congress.com.
That's T.O., Chris2 Congress.
It's all spelled out.
Right. How come you didn't do Chris for Congress?
Because it's declarative.
Somebody.
2. Send me to Congress.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
I get it. Well,
You got an English lesson on there.
Thank you. Usually you're the one that gives
Yes,
me
he beat me to
English
it.
and grammar lectures. Thank you. See?
Yep. If I may, there's one thing I would like to add.
Of course.
So going out and really speaking with people in the district, I've become to realize that there is an overwhelming majority that are upset with the political system and the political parties enforcing partisanship. And I think that if there were more people that started talking to each other, that they would realize that their perspective on what's happening here in the country is not, they're not the only ones. And I would encourage them to go out and to start speaking with their neighbors and find out just how closely aligned many of us are. I think probably 70% of us are seeing the same problem and looking for another path.
Chris Coulombe is running for the 2nd Congressional District here in Sonoma County. He'll be running against Jared Huffman. And Chris, I appreciate you coming in, and we will definitely be talking to you a lot during this time period here.
Great, Steve. I really appreciate the time.
You betcha. And it's Coulombe, pronounced Coulombe.
Yes, sir.
That's a cool name.
I like it.
Coulombe. All right, Chris, thanks, man. And again, we will talk.
Thank you both, gentlemen.
All right.
Thank you.